Hey everybody, welcome back to Football Talk with Vinny. In today's video, we're going to be going over our playoff predictions. Now, as you can tell, I do have a stuffy nose, a little sick. I actually called out of work today, so I thought, what a better thing to do after calling out of work than get a video done. But in all seriousness, let's get to the predictions. Obviously, I made some predictions at the beginning of the season. I'm actually going to go over those a little later, again, because I don't really feel well. I did want to make 2 videos, and I definitely want to get this video out before the first playoff game is played. So what I'm going to do, probably in a couple days or maybe a week, I'll make another video just reacting to some of my predictions before the season had started. But anyways, let's get into the video. Let's talk about the very first matchup, which is the Raiders at the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, obviously, for the Raiders, right, got a huge win on that Sunday night game in order to clinch their playoff spot. The Bengals knew they were in a week prior. In terms of the matchup, it's pretty good in terms of the fact that both teams are young teams. Both teams have never been to the playoffs before. So, one of these two teams is going to get a very big victory for their franchise. Cincy hasn't won a playoff game since I think it was like 91, and the Raiders have been pretty much irrelevant for the last decade plus, maybe 15 to 20 years, closer to the early 2000s. Kind of when they had Rich Gannon and they went to the Super Bowl in 2002. As I did last year in my playoff prediction video, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go over a couple basic stats for you guys. So the Las Vegas Raiders were 6th in pass offense, 28th in rush offense. They were 11th in total offensive yards gained. They were 11th total in yards gained. On the defensive side, they were 13th against the pass, 19th against the run, 14th total, and then in terms of points scored, they were the 18th highest scoring offense, and they gave up the 24th most points on defense. So obviously, you look at those stats, they're a great passing offense. Everything else is kind of average, if a little bit below. Everything else is kind of average except their rush offense, which is kind of below average at 28th. Now, if you look at the Bengals, they're pretty similar. They're going to be 7th in pass offense, 23rd in rush offense, 13th in total offense. Then on the defensive side, it's a little better. In one area, worse in the other. They're 26th against the pass, so pretty bad, but they are 5th against the run. They're 18th in total defense. In terms of points, they are the 7th highest scoring offense, and they're the 17th in points allowed. So when you look at a lot of the statistics, it's pretty similar. Obviously, both teams are very good at passing the ball. Obviously, the Raiders have a better pass defense than the Bengals, but the Bengals have a better rush defense. When you look at the scoring numbers, though, that's where it kind of jumps off the page, where Cincy's 7th and the Raiders are 18th. And then in defense, they're 17th as opposed to 27th. Excuse me, it's 26th. And it kind of makes sense, right? If you are the 5th best rushing off defense like the Bengals are, you're able to maybe get opponents get in the red zone, right? Because you're giving up a bunch of yards. But when you get in the red zone, you're able to stop the opposing team from running the football. It's much more difficult to pass in the red zone. So you get more stops, resulting in more field goals, not touchdowns. Whereas the Raiders, they allow people to drive the field, but when they get in the red zone, they're still able to run on them, which is why they probably converted a higher percentage of touchdowns as opposed to field goals. Game I do think is going to be very close. Again, both teams don't really rely on the running game, but they have good running backs, right? One is Joe Mixon with the Cincinnati Bengals. The other one is Josh Jacobs with the Las Vegas Raiders. Almost say Oakland every time. This game actually could come down to really whichever team has the ball last, because both quarterbacks are very good. I am going to go slightly ahead. I'm going to pick the Cincinnati Bengals in a small victory, 34-31. But again, I do think it's going to be a very close ball game. Next, we'll go over the Patriots and Bills. This is going to be a very big game, probably a much bigger game for Buffalo, because if you're Buffalo, you've been beaten up by the New England Patriots for the last 2 decades. And now that Brady is no longer there, right, they were able to win the division last year and get to the AFC Championship game. And this year, A lot of people thought that it was going to be no different. You're going to be battling really Kansas City to get to the Super Bowl. So the fact that you had lost the one fluky-ish game because of the win to New England this year, but now that you get them in the playoffs, if you were to lose this game, that would be very heartbreaking for a Bills fan, because you know that Mac Jones is a rookie quarterback and he's going to get better as time progresses. So if you don't beat them now, they could be an even scarier team next year. With that being said, let me quickly get into the stats. We'll go over the New England Patriots stats first. They were 14th in pass offense, 8th in rush offense, 15th in total. On the defensive side, they were the number 2 pass defense in the league, 22nd against the run, 4th in total yards allowed. In terms of scoring, they were actually the 6th highest scoring offense, which is a little crazy. They were the 2nd best defense. I think a lot of people knew that. But the fact that they were 6th in scoring, I think is a little crazy. I don't think most people would have known that. Now, obviously, they had a couple games where they put up 40 points. Their defense had a couple of turnovers, which gave short fields. Right? I think against the Jets, they put up 30 plus one game and 40 plus another. Now we're going to go over the Bills, which their numbers is probably as impressive as any team. They were 9th in pass offense, 6th in rush offense. They were number 5 in total offense. And then on the defensive side, they were number 1 against the pass, 13th against the run, number 1 in total defense. And then they were the number 3 scoring offense and the number 1 scoring defense. They did finish the season as the highest point differential, which that just means you take the amount of points scored, subtracted by the amount of points given up, and what is the difference there? They had the biggest positive number. Dallas was 2nd. So really, when you look at all the statistics, the fact that the Patriots have a rookie quarterback, really all the signs kind of point and lead to the Buffalo Bills winning this game. But obviously, you do have Bill Belichick on the other side. He is the greatest coach in NFL history, right? They do have a top-notch defense. If that defense can get a couple stops, you're not really telling the rookie quarterback he has to put up 30 to win the ball game, right? So obviously, New England's defense is going to have to come to play. You're going to have to hold Buffalo definitely under 30, probably closer to 20 to 21 points if you're going to give yourself a chance to win. With that being said, I do think it's going to be a close game. I am going to take the Buffalo Bills 27-20. Next, we got my Dallas Cowboys going up against the 49ers. And it's kind of a weird game because if you look at all the teams that made the playoffs in the NFC, we're probably facing the weakest quarterback, but probably one of the stronger teams. Right? So obviously, if we're able to get into a shootout and make it a high-scoring game, we probably should be able to run away with the game because I don't think the Niners offense is going to be able to keep up with us, but they're so good on the defensive end and they're such a good rush offense that they may be able to have some ball control and kind of limit the possessions for the Dallas Cowboys and make it a tight game. Very quickly, let me get into the numbers. We'll start with the San Francisco 49ers. So they are 12th in pass offense, 7th in rush offense, 7th in total offense. On the defensive side, they're 6th against the pass, 7th against the run, 3rd in total. They're 13th in terms of scoring offense and 10th in scoring defense. So they're just a very good, solid team every way around. Now let's go look at the Dallas Cowboys. They are actually the number 2 pass offense. They're the number 9 rush offense. That gives them the best total offense in terms of yards gained. On the defensive side, though, they're 20th against the pass, 16th against the run, 19th in total defense. Their scoring offense, they actually were number 1. They scored the most points all season, so they were the number 1 offense in terms of yards and the number 1 offense in terms of points. Defensively, those where it gets weird because they were 19th in total defense, but in terms of points allowed, they were number 7. So kind of doesn't add up, right? When you're the 19th best defense in terms of yards allowed, but yet you have allowed the 7th fewest. It's pretty crazy how that works. Now, obviously, a big factor is the turnovers, right? Dallas had, I think, the most turnovers of any team. So when you're getting a lot of turnovers, yes, you're allowing yards. When you get those turnovers, you don't allow points. You give the offense, our offense that is, the ball back, and they're able to go on a drive, chew up some more clock, and let the opposing offense kind of sit back on the bench. Now, as a Cowboys fan, I pride myself, I guess, on not being like delusional about my team. I don't think that we are as close to the number 7 scoring defense as we are the 19th overall defense. meaning I think our defense is not as good as it played throughout the season. And I think that when you rely on turnovers in a season, it kind of is like it's very fickle, right? You can have some turnovers one game and you might not have none the next. And also, when you're talking about getting into the playoffs, this is now a one-game playoff. So if you don't create those turnovers in this game, you're probably going to look more so like the 20th best defense where you are ranked, not like the number 7th ranked scoring defense. Now, granted, we're not up against a great quarterback. We're up against probably one of the worst ones we could have played this entire postseason. But again, if you don't create the turnovers and you allow the 49ers to run the football on us and do the play actions, right, and get maybe big plays over the top, right, our corners are susceptible to that. That's why we are 20th in pass defense. I don't think it's going to be a great game. If the Niners are able to have that ball control and keep the ball for 35, 40 plus minutes of clock, right, that's going to limit Dallas's possessions. And the more you limit Dallas's possessions, the more you make it about obviously maximizing each and every possession. And I think with the Dallas Cowboys, since they just are the better offense, you want more possessions. You don't want to shorten the game, you want to extend the game. You want more possessions because it gives you more of an opportunity to punch those possessions into the end zone. I do think a lot of the game will be determined in that first quarter. I think whichever team gets a lead is going to put tremendous pressure on the opposing team. If Dallas is able to score first, it might take the Niners out of their game plan to run the football a lot, and they may force Jimmy G to make some more throws. And at that point, then you're able to maybe create some of those turnovers. But if the Niners are to score first, it's going to put a tremendous amount of pressure on the Cowboys defense and also their offense, because now they're going to feel like they have to score, because if they punt the ball, our defense statistically is not good enough to get stops unless, again, it's a turnover. But when the opposing offense is playing with a lead, they're less likely to turn the ball over. I really think this is going to be one of the closest playoff games. I do have the Cowboys winning this one at 24-21, but I do think it's going to be an extremely close ball game. Now, again, if Dallas were to go up early in the first quarter and the Niners have to pass it more, then maybe I could see Dallas winning by multiple scores. But unless that happens, I think it's going to be a very tight ball game. We'll go over the Eagles and the Bucks quickly. For the Eagles stats, they were the number 25 pass offense, but the number 1 rush offense. That gave them a total of 14 in terms of yards gained. On the defensive side, pretty consistent. 11th against the run, 9th against the pass, 10th in total. On terms of scoring, they were the 12th highest scoring offense and the 18th most points allowed. So obviously for Philly, it's pretty simple. They're very good at running the ball. When you run the ball, that's ball control. You're able to have the ball more. And also, obviously what that does is it makes the opposing offense be on the field less. You obviously shorten the game. You give less possessions in total. And with less possessions, it gives you a better chance to win a ball game against a high-powered offense, which is exactly who they're up against. And we'll go over the Bucs stats. They were the number 1 pass offense, number 26th in rushing, not great, but it finishes the number 2 offense total. On the defensive side, they're number 21 against the pass, not great. They are number 3 again against the run. They've been number 1, I think, the last 2 years in a row. So this year they're still in the top 5. Gives them a total of 13th in defense, number 2 scoring offense, number 5 scoring defense. So again, they have a top unit on both offense and defense again. Like we talked about with the Niners, they're able to stop the run. So I think a big reason why they're 26th in the pass, 21st in the pass, is because teams just choose to not run against the Tampa Bay Bucks. I know that's what Dallas did in week 1 all the way back in the beginning of the season. We just said, you know what, we're not even going to run the ball. Their defensive line is so good, we're not even going to try, and let's just throw it, right? And we were able to be very successful. I think a lot of teams kind of employ that same game plan. But what ends up happening is, again, from the Eagles' perspective, if you are an offense that's built around running, you're probably not going to go into that game saying, I'm going to pass. So this is going to be literally just strength on strength. Is the Philadelphia Eagles going to be able to run the ball against that stout Bucks front 7? If they're able to run the ball and shorten the possessions, they do have a realistic chance to win. They did play earlier in the season. I want to say it was like a 7 or 10 point ball game. But the Bucks obviously have had to deal with the Antonio Brown drama, but also they lost Chris Godwin, who I believe played in the first matchup. So you're losing some good offensive weapons at this point. So you lose a couple of pieces in offense. If the Eagles are able to run the ball, keep the ball in their hands, limit Brady's possessions, you do have a chance to win. Again, the unfortunate part for the Eagles is you are going up against one of the better run defenses. So in the game, I am going to take the Bucs. I'm going to take them at a score of 31-21. I think it could be close, and maybe a late touchdown at the end kind of makes it a two-score game. Two more games to go over in the wild card round. First, we'll go over the Kansas City Chiefs and the Steelers. Very quickly with the Steelers stats first. They're kind of bad all the way across the board, but let's go over them. They're the 15th best pass offense, 29th in rushing, 23rd in total. On the defensive side, not much better. They're 19th against the run. They were dead last. They're 19th against the pass, They were dead last against the run. They ranked 32nd. They've given up the most rushing yards all season. They were 24th in total defensive yards allowed. And then in terms of scoring, on the offensive side, they were the 21st highest scoring offense, and they were the 20th ranked defense in terms of points allowed. So really not great all the way around. It's kind of shocking that they made the playoffs. If you've watched some of my earlier videos where I did my power rankings, I never really ranked the Steelers pretty high because they always had a negative scoring differential, and for some reason they were able to squeak out enough victories, and with that tie against the Detroit Lions, to barely make it into the playoffs. Now quickly, let's go over the Kansas City Chiefs. As you'd expect, they were the number 4 ranked pass offense, number 16th against the run, 3 in total offense, 27th in rush defense, 21st in pass defense, 27th in total defense. In terms of scoring, though, they were the number 4 scoring offense, which you'd expect. They were the number 8 best defense. They allowed the 8th fewest points. So obviously, it's kind of similar to Dallas, I think. Whereas I don't think that Dallas is as great as their points per game shows. I think the same about Kansas City. It's just when you have a high-powered offense, you're able to put pressure on the opposing team's offense to have to maybe play outside their game plan and try to make big plays that might not be there. And now all of a sudden, you turn the ball over 1 or 2 times, and instead of getting that field goal or maybe possibly a touchdown, you get no points. And at the end of the day, at the end of the season, it makes your scoring defense look better than it really was. That being said, I think the Steelers are probably, even Ben Roethlisberger said it in his last interview a couple hours ago, probably one of the worst, if not the worst, playoff team of the 14. I think had the Colts or Chargers got into the playoffs, those would have been much better teams than the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I would have given them a much better chance of beating the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, it's football, anything can happen, so we'll see if the Steelers defense can play very well. Even though they're the last ranked rush defense, doesn't really matter. You're going up against a pass offense. So if they're able to get some stops and maybe get some turnovers and force Mahomes back into how he played earlier in the season, where their offense was turning the ball over a lot, who knows, maybe you give yourself a chance. But I'm going to go with the Chiefs 34-20 in this game. A 14-point swing. It's pretty big margin for a playoff game. Of the last wild card games, this might be the closest, along with the Dallas Cowboys. It's the Rams against the Cardinals. Obviously, the game's going to be in Los Angeles with the Rams winning the division. The Rams actually won the division based on the fact that they had 12 wins as opposed to Arizona's 11. Both teams to the second half of the season kind of been on a mini slide. Probably Arizona's has been a little worse, but they might actually get back J.J. Watt. He has been off the injured list, so he might play this week. They were saying D-Hop probably realistically won't be back at least until they make like an NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl. So very quickly though, let me go over the stats with the Rams first. They were 5th again in the pass. They were the 5th best pass offense, 25th best rush offense. That gives them the 9th best offense total in terms of yards gained. On the defensive side, they were 22nd against the pass, 6th against the run, 17th in total defense. Their scoring was 8th in the league in terms of offense. They scored the 8th most points, and they allowed the 15th. So kind of a good offense and an average defense. Whereas the Cardinals, they were kind of in that 10 range with most of the stats, and you'll see in a minute. They were 10th in pass offense, 10th in rush offense. They were the 8th best in total yards. In terms of defense, they were number 7 against the pass, number 20 against the run. That gave them number 11 in total. They were the number 11 scoring offense and the number 11 scoring defense. So it's as consistent as really as you can get. The only thing they were particularly bad at was their rush defense, being ranked 20. But even then, that's not too bad. Again, you did lose J.J. Watt for a huge portion of the season, which does hurt your rush defense as he is a good interior player. Now, obviously, the first matchup, the Cardinals blew them out. You did have D-Hop that game. The second matchup, when you did not have D-Hop, Kyler Murray played a bad game, did not throw a touchdown, also had 2 interceptions. So obviously it's going to be of which Kyler Murray plays and how does the loss of D-Hop in a playoff game affect the entire offense. Obviously, we're about to find out. You are playing a very good Rams defense. You do have Jalen Ramsey, and without having D-Hop, you probably feel comfortable if you're the Rams putting D-Hop on a guy like A.J. Green and then trying to double other receivers and just say, you know what, we don't think A.J. Green can beat Jalen Ramsey one-on-one. Whereas if you had D-Hop, it might be a different story. You might even decide to put Jalen Ramsey on A.J. Green so you can double D-Hop. But then again, if you double D-Hop, it maybe leaves other guys open. But on the reverse end, though, I think that the Rams offense has not played particularly great in the last couple of weeks. Obviously, Matthew Stafford could play a good game. He could have a couple of turnovers that could cost him a game. And he's never played with more pressure than he's about to enter right now. They do have a Super Bowl caliber team for sure, 100%. He's never really had that with the Detroit Lions. So he's about to enter in a playoff game where he's probably going to be favored and he's going to be expected to win this game. It's much different than even the first couple of times he got to the playoffs. They weren't really expected to win. They were kind of an upstart team with the Detroit Lions. So we're going to see how he responds. Obviously, Kyler Murray's first playoff game as well, so we'll see how he responds. I am going to take the Rams in this one. I'm going to take it as a very close game, 24-21. So with that being said, I have all the wildcard games all finished. If you are still watching, we'll get into the divisional matchups. One more thing before I get on to the divisional. I actually, as I looked at it, it was really weird. I have all the home teams winning. Obviously, statistically, that doesn't really happen, so I'm probably going to be wrong in the prediction. But that's just the way I see it. But again, having all the home teams win is usually not a good idea. That usually does not hold. So now getting into the matchup, it's going to be the Green Bay Packers against the Los Angeles Rams. And let me go over the Green Bay Packers stats, as I didn't go over them because they would have had the bye week. So Green Bay, similar to Arizona, is pretty consistent all the way across the board. They were just maybe a little better in terms of the consistency. They were the number 8 pass offense, number 18 rush offense, good for 10th in total yards, 10th best pass defense, 11th best rush defense, for the 9th best total defensive yards allowed. In terms of scoring, they were 10th in scoring and 14th in points allowed on defense. So pretty consistent all the way across the board. Now, obviously, in this matchup, you got 2 good quarterbacks, right? 2 good rosters. I think if Jaire Alexander was to come back and actually be playing at the level that we expect him to play at when he comes back, which is an all-pro level, which may be unfair to him because he hasn't played all year, it's going to be even more scary if you're a Green Bay Packers fan. I think once the game kicks off, or maybe even a couple days before, this is going to be probably the most pressure I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be under. Not necessarily that the pressure is going to make him play bad. He usually plays great regardless. But I think everyone leading up to the week is going to be talking about, is this his last game in Green Bay? And that's kind of like an unfair pressure because he's not the one that's choosing it. It's kind of the organization. But he's probably going to have to answer some of those questions, or at least if he doesn't, he'll get asked them leading up to the playoff game, and his teammates may be asked that as well. And again, Davante Adams could be his last game. I think that's a lot of distractions. Obviously, we'll see how the game plays out, but I do think Aaron Rodgers is still going to play great because even when he gets those questions and all that stuff, he usually is always very consistent. He always plays well. With that being said, though, I'm not really going to go off of my Super Bowl prediction. I do think it's going to be a close game. I'm going to pick the Rams, though, to win this game 28-27. I don't think that the Rams are incapable of going into Lambeau and getting a victory. They obviously played them last year with Wolford at their quarterback, and that game was surprisingly close considering you had a backup quarterback. So I think this year, all those Rams players are going to remember that game and remember the fact that they were that close from potentially giving themselves an opportunity to win a Super Bowl last year. I think the fact that they have Matt Stafford, so they have a quarterback that they know if their defense gives up 28, 30 points, their offense is more than capable with Stafford to put up 30 and give themselves a chance to win the ball game. Obviously, that matchup, Davante Adams on Jalen Ramsey, is going to be very huge. It's one of maybe the only matchups in the NFL where the corner and the team for that, and the Los Angeles Rams, may feel comfortable that they don't have to double Davante all game and that Jalen can do a good enough job to where he's not going to go for 15 receptions for 200 yards and 2 TDs if you just single cover him all game like he does to every other team when you single him. If that happens, it's not going to be a game plan that Green Bay is used to facing. They're used to getting easier coverages because when you have to line up 2 guys over Davante Adams, it makes the read simpler for every other player in that offense, and obviously Aaron Rodgers specifically, because everyone else is single covered and you just go to the weak spot of the defense. If they decide to play Jalen one-on-one with Davante Adams, it's going to be a battle of, well, I trust my guy to win his one-on-one, but if Jalen is able to make a couple of plays and force you to have to go to other players because he's winning so much of the battles, then it could get dicey for the Green Bay Packers. I'm not saying it's going to be a blowout again. I have the scores 28-27. I just think that the Rams have a chance to make enough plays on defense to get a win. With that, we'll go into the next matchup in the NFC, so Dallas Cowboys and the Bucs. We kind of already went over the statistics for both teams. Again, this is the number 1 and number 2 pass offense, the number 1 and number 2 scoring offense. So obviously it's going to be a very high-powered game. Going to be a lot of offense in this game. Obviously, if you're Dallas, you need to do kind of what you did in week 1 and get a bunch of turnovers to give yourself a chance and opportunity to win. If you're the Bucs, I think it's going to be different in the sense that you're without 2 of your top 4 weapons, arguably. So it might be a different game plan. You may have to rely more on your defense. Your pass defense needs to get some stops like it did not do in week 1 of the season. Because I don't think that if Dak is going to throw for 450 yards again, I don't think they're going to win that ball game, because I don't know if their offense is going to put up 30 plus points without 2 of their best 4 offensive weapons. With that being said, I know I try not to be a homer. You may call me a homer for this pick, but I'm going to take the Dallas Cowboys to win the game very close, 31-28. I think last time they played in week 1, they lost the game 29-31. So I have a very similar score. I just have Dallas on the very, very short end, winning that ball game at 31-28. Next, we'll go over the AFC. So the Tennessee Titans, let me quickly go over their stats, as I did not do so because they were the 1 seed. So Tennessee, they were clearly have a focus, which is the running game, and then on both sides of the ball, they were not great passing. So I'll get into it though. They were 24th in pass offense, 5th in rush offense, and that's with Derrick Henry missing 8 games. If he had played, they might have been number 1 or 2. In scoring offense, they were 17th. And then on the defensive side, pretty much the same story. They were 25th against the pass, but number 2 against the run. So they know how to run the ball, and they know how to stop the run. In total defense, they were 12th. Now, in terms of scoring, they were the 15th highest scoring offense, but they were actually 6th in points allowed. And I think that goes along the same lines as the Cincinnati Bengals and the San Francisco 49ers. Teams that are able to stop the run, and also the Bucs as well, teams that are able to stop the run, what happens is when the opposing offense gets inside the 20 and specifically inside the 10, it's 10 times more difficult to pass, because as a defense, there's no over the top no more. When you're at the 10, there's no such thing as, oh, I'm going to get beat deep. So everything is condensed, everything is closer. And with that being said, the teams that can run the ball offensively probably statistically do better in the red zone than teams that can't run and can only pass. So I think that has to do why Tennessee's the 6th best scoring defense, is because they don't allow teams to run the football. So even though they give up a bunch of yards from 20 to 20, once you get inside the 20, because they're so good against the run, they allow teams, or they stop teams, and they force them to kick field goals instead of giving up touchdowns. And over the course of a long season, it's the difference between the 6th rated scoring defense, and the 16th, for example. Now, with that being said, if you're going up against a team like the Cincinnati Bengals, they're scary on offense all the way around, from Joe Mixon to Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, right? T. Higgins. They have weapons everywhere. Joe Burrow is a top 10 quarterback, unquestionably, probably a top 5 quarterback. So it doesn't really play well for the Tennessee Titans because they're not great against the pass, and you're going up against a very good pass offense. With that being said, if they're able to neutralize Joe Mixon and force the Bengals to pass, I think it's much different because their offense is so explosive, both running and passing, that play action is... The run game does set up the play actions for Joe Burrow, and they do get a lot of big plays off of it. So if they're not able to scare Tennessee into thinking that they can run, then the play action really won't be there. And now it's just, hey, the DNs pin their ears back, they go after Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow just has to make plays, which again, he can. It's just consistently over the course of the game, I think it's going to be tougher if they can't run the football. With that being said, giving Derrick Henry another week off because they have the bye. I had said this in week 8, obviously when he got hurt. I think it's going to be a blessing for them. He was on pace for 400 plus touches. He was going to approach 500 with the amount of touches they were giving him. I think that would not have been great for the postseason run, but because he got hurt and he was out 8 weeks and now they get a bye, you're able to not worry about giving him 30, 40 touches in any of the playoff games they're going to be in because he's not going to be worn down because he hasn't had a carry in over 2 months. With that being said, I do have Tennessee pulling out a very close game, 27-24. Next, we have the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, they did play each other earlier this season. The Bills smacked them 38-20, I believe was the score. Obviously, they caught them at the tail end of the Chiefs playing probably the worst offensive football they have played, and also probably one of the poorest games they had played defensively. Now, going into the game, I don't think that it's going to be a blowout again on either side, but when you do look at the numbers, I think it does favor Buffalo a little bit. Although Kansas City is one of the top 5 passing offenses, you are facing a Buffalo Bills team that was ranked in pass defense #1 in the league. So you are facing a very good and the best pass defense. So if they're able to contain them a little bit passing, I think Buffalo would be able to move the ball kind of at will on the Kansas City Chiefs defense. And I think if there was ever a team that is not afraid of Kansas City's high-powered offense, it's Buffalo, because they have a high-powered offense themselves. They can score 21 points in a quarter just like Kansas City can. Although, again, I do think it's going to be a close game. I'm actually, even though it's on the road, I'm going to have the Buffalo Bills winning the game 31-27. I just think that both offenses are going to be very good. I think if you're Buffalo, playing a team that's not that great defensively, I think is going to help their confidence going into the NFC Championship game. And again, if they were to beat the New England Patriots the week before, you're going to have to put up a lot of points against a very good defense. So I think 1 week after preparing for one of the most elite defenses you're going to face, having the next week against one of the worst defenses you're going to have to face, I think is going to give them way more confidence. So in that first round, I did have all the home teams winning, but in this divisional round, I actually had most of the road teams winning. I picked the Rams over Green Bay, I picked Dallas over the Bucks, and then I picked the Bills over the Kansas City Chiefs. The only home team I had winning was the Tennessee Titans. It may be completely incorrect, but it's just how I kind of predict it going. So now let's get into the AFC and NFC championship games. We'll start with the NFC, so my Dallas Cowboys against the Los Angeles Rams. Obviously, on paper, it's going to be pretty close, right? You got both teams that got capable quarterbacks. They're both roughly top 10 guys. You have decent running games. Both of the offenses have weapons everywhere. Obviously, Dallas probably has better weapons, but it's really more the defensive side with the Rams where you get the bigger check marks. They have better playmakers on that side of the ball, better difference makers. Sure, we have Trevon Diggs, who had 11 interceptions, but he also gave up over 1,000 yards he also gave up over 1,000 yards in coverage, the worst of any cornerback. So although he has the big play potential, he also has big play potential the other way, which is to get beat off a double move for a 70-yard score that could cost you a ball game in an NFC Championship game. Now, obviously, as a Cowboys fan, I would love it if Dallas were to win the game. I do think it could be a toss-up. Again, once you get to this level, every team is going to be very good, so it really just depends on who makes plays. I just think that the Los Angeles Rams have better difference makers on the defensive end. a guy like Aaron Donald can wreck the game. And sure, we have Micah Parsons. We have a couple of players on defense that could make some plays. I think overall, I like the Rams defense over the Dallas defense. And also, this could be a little bit of a pick of like, hey, I took the Rams to win the Super Bowl when the season started, and I don't really see a reason for me to kind of back off that prediction. Now, if I'm wrong and Dallas does win, I'd actually probably like that more as a Cowboys fan, but at this point, I don't really see a reason for me to pick against the Rams. We'll finish off with the Tennessee Titans and the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, they played earlier this season. Tennessee won 34-31, I believe was the final. Buffalo had that goal line decision where they could have kicked a field goal, went into overtime. They decided to go for it, didn't get it, and lost the ball game. Now, I do think the game could play out in a very similar fashion, whereas I think it's going to be very difficult for Buffalo to stop the Tennessee Titans run game. Also, I think in that game, you still had Tennessee's receivers were banged up. I think one of them did not play. So I think in this game, there could be a situation where both of the Tennessee Titans receivers are healthy finally, and you're able to kind of really scare them more on the outside, saying if you do put 8-9 in the box to stop Derrick Henry, you are going one-on-one with A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. With that being said, though, I do think it's going to be a very, very similar outcome. I'm going to choose the Tennessee Titans to win the ball game 31-27. Again, very close game. I think Josh Allen could potentially have the ball in his hands at the very end of the game with a chance to win and driving, and it'll just come down to if the defense can make a stop. Again, that leads me to the Super Bowl, and obviously with the predictions that I had before the season, I had the Titans and Rams. It's going to be tough to get me off that. Just because Tennessee is the #1 seed, so I think that they should be favored in the AFC. And in the NFC, I think it's a crapshoot either way. I think between the Green Bay Packers, the Los Angeles Rams, the Tampa Bay Bucks, and the Dallas Cowboys, you could technically probably throw Arizona in there, but with the injury to D-Hop, I think it's less likely. And also, you don't know if JJ is going to play. But those top 4 teams for sure, I think if you picked any one of the 4, you would not be shocked if any of the 4 made it to the Super Bowl. So if you had picked the Bucks, I don't think that's like, oh, I can't believe they picked against Green Bay, because the Bucks are a very good team too. You know, again, if you had picked the Dallas Cowboys, I'm not picking them even though they're my team. If you had picked the Dallas Cowboys, I don't think anyone would argue with you. Again, they are #2 in terms of scoring differential. But again, my Super Bowl is going to be the Rams and Titans, and kind of like I said in the predictions video before the season started, the way the season's played out, I really don't see a reason for me to really get off the prediction. In terms of the Super Bowl specifically, though, I think my prediction of, and we'll talk about that, like I said, in a later video, Julio has not really played as well as I thought he was going to play, which may change the game plan heading into the Super Bowl. Because I think if you had watched that prior video, I talked about how it's going to be a difficult matchup. Who do you want Jalen to cover? Because I thought both receivers are top 10 receivers. But the way it's played out is A.J. Brown is clearly a top 10 guy, but Julio has not. So you're probably 100% going to put Jalen on A.J. Brown. That means you're able to bring that safety up in the box to try to stop the run. And then you're going to force the #2 corner to say, you know what? We're going to force Julio to make plays on us. If he can make some plays, then we'll make adjustments. But if he can't make any plays in single coverage with the #2 corner, this is how we're going to play Tennessee, and we're going to try to force them to force feed Julio the ball. So I actually think it probably makes it a little easier for the Rams to win a ball game like that if Julio doesn't come back to the form that I thought he was going to play at. But again, I still do think it's going to be a close game. Tennessee's offense is still very difficult to defend against. They are pretty good on defense as well. But again, with that being said, I am going to pick the Rams to win the Super Bowl. I'm going to have the final as 24-21. So that's going to be my predictions. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did like it, make sure to leave a like and also consider subscribing, as that does help out the channel a ton. But again, I look forward to watching them, and what I'll probably do is, as the weeks go by, I will update and make a new video on who I think is going to win that particular week, like I did last year. I just think it's a fun thing to do. So again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I look forward to the playoff games. Thank you so much. Bye.